Hello. I know we all love a bit of Mr. Men, and this one looks particularly good, and this is Mr. Jelly and the Pirates. I hope you enjoy it. Mr. Jelly is the most nervous person you will ever meet. The slightest thing will send him into a panic. Even the sound of the wind in the trees will make him bolt behind the sofa, quivering and shaking in fear. So, as you can imagine, it takes Mr. Jelly a long time to pluck up enough courage to go on holiday. This year, Mr. Jelly went to Seatown. Mr. Jelly longed to join everyone playing in the sea, but he was too frightened. "Why don't you go for a swim?" suggested Mr. Lazy. I'm too scared," admitted Mr. Jelly. There might be nasty seaweed or a crab or a shark." "Well, why don't you go out in my dinghy?" replied Mr. Lazy. I might drift out to sea and never be found again," said Mr. Jelly, trembling at the thought. "No, you won't," said Mr. Lazy. "Not if I hold on to the rope." Mr. Jelly thought this over and decided to risk it. After a while, Mr. Jelly began to enjoy himself in the dinghy, but when he looked back, he discovered that he was a very long way from the beach. Mr. Lazy had fallen asleep and the rope had slipped through his fingers. "Oh, help, help! A wave is going to turn over the boat and I'm going to be swallowed by a whale!" shrieked Mr. Jelly, but he was far too far away for anyone to hear him. Before long, the land disappeared and large black storm clouds gathered on the horizon. Thunder boomed and lightning crackled. The sea rose up in a great roaring mass that tossed the little dinghy from wave to wave. Mr. Jelly cowered in the bottom of the boat. "Oh, help, help!" he shrieked. "I'm going to be struck by lightning and burnt to a crisp and tipped out of the boat, drowned." And then he fainted. When he came to, he discovered that he'd been washed up on a tiny deserted island. Mr. Jelly stared out at the vast expanse of sea. "Oh, help!" he said in a very small voice, and then he fainted again. Mr. Jelly was woken by the sound of digging. He peered through the bushes at the side of the beach. What he saw filled him with terror. 3 swashbuckling, ruthless-looking pirates were digging up a treasure chest. Mr. Jelly knew that he must not make a sound, but the more he tried not to make a sound, the more he wobbled and trembled in fear, and the more he wobbled and trembled, the more the bushes shook and rustled. So in a very short time, Mr. Jelly was found and set, quivering on the sand in front of the pirates. Oh, there he is. "Well, shiver me timbers if it ain't just what we need," growled the pirate captain. "A cabin boy." 3 pirates and their new cabin boy rowed out to their pirate ship, anchored in the bay. Mr. Jelly shook and trembled and quivered in terror. The pirates, who prided themselves on their bravery, chuckled and laughed. They'd never met anyone as nervous as Mr. Jelly, and over the following week they came to realise just how nervous Mr. Jelly really was. On the first day, the first mate ordered Mr. Jelly up into the rigging to set the sail. "Oh, help, help!" shrieked Mr. Jelly. "It's so high up and I'm going to have to climb and climb, and then I'll give in higher and I'll get dizzy and I'll fall down into the sea and I'll be eaten by a shark." And then he fainted. Luckily, he'd only climbed 2 rungs and the first mate caught him easily. "I'd never thought of that," murmured the first mate to himself. The next day, the quartermaster ordered Mr. Jelly to sharpen the cutlasses on the grinding, saying, "Oh, help! Oh, help!" screamed Mr. Jelly. "I'll make the cutlass very sharp, and it will be so sharp that I'll cut my finger, and then I'll bleed. And then he fainted. "Oh, I've never thought of that," mumbled the quartermaster to himself. On the 3rd day, the gunner ordered Mr. Jelly to practice firing the cannon. Oh, help, shrieked Mr. Jelly. "I'll load the cannon and fire the cannon. The explosion will be so loud I'll go deaf and then I won't be able to hear anything. And then, well, you know what happened then. He fainted again." "I've never thought of that," muttered the gunner to himself. And so it continued all week. Mr. Jelly even fainted when the cook ordered him to light the stove of the galley because he was afraid he would set the ship on fire. But a very strange thing happened during the week. Not only did the pirates discover how nervous Mr. Jelly was, but they also began to find out how nervous they were too. The more Mr. Jelly shrieked and fainted and quivered and quaked at what terrible accidents might happen, the more the pirates found themselves worrying. By the end of the week, the pirate captain found himself with a crew who were too scared to do anything. Even the ship's carpenter had down tools because he was afraid he might get a splinter. "This is hopeless," roared the captain. "How can we call ourselves pirates? That cabin boy has turned you all into scaredy cats. Mr. Jelly must walk the plank." So Mr. Jelly was pushed out onto the plank. "Oh, help, screamed Mr. Jelly. "Don't make me walk the plank. I'll fall into the sea and then I'll have to swim for hours and hours and then I'll get weaker and weaker and then I'll drown." "Oh, that's horrible," said the first mate. "Yeah, really nasty," agreed the quartermaster. "You can't do that," said the gunner. And the rest of the crew agreed. "That's it," cried the captain. "I give up. Do what you want." And the crew did. They sailed very cautiously and very slowly to Seatown, where they let Mr. Jelly off. Mr. Jelly found Mr. Lazy on the beach fast asleep. And Mr. Lazy yawned, stretched and opened an eye. "Hello," he said sleepily. "Oh, did you have fun?" "Sorry, I fell asleep. But here you are, safe and sound." Mr. Jelly began to wobble and quiver and shake, but not in fear. Mr. Jelly was very, very, very angry. Mr. Lazy wasn't a very good friend, was he? He didn't take care of his friend. But at least the pirate saw sense and brought Mr. Jelly back. Hope you enjoyed that story. Until next time.